Good day students, today we'll be learning about Geoffrey Chaucer. In your syllabus you have got the Pardoner's Tale, which is a part of the Canterbury Tales, a tale constituting of 24 different stories, narrated by 29 pilgrims who were on a pilgrimage to the shrine of St. Thomas Becket. They were traveling and on their way they were telling each other the story, and this was a sort of passing time for them. Now, Geoffrey Chaucer does this in a very beautiful way, and his life experiences helped in narrating such stories. Now, before going for Canterbury Tales, we will go for Geoffrey Chaucer. Now, the age of Geoffrey Chaucer, for that, we have to deal with the life of Geoffrey Chaucer first. Matthew Arnold, another literary artist of the modern literature, has called Chaucer the father of our splendid English poetry. According to Matthew Arnold, Chaucer was founder of a new tradition, and his superiority existed both in the substance of poetry and in the style of his poetry. For Matthew Arnold, Chaucer's major contribution towards poetry was his adherence to realism. He used to put focus on the truth of substance, about real life experience in a realistic manner. Now, here in Chaucer's prologue to Canterbury Tales, we will see how it resembles modern literature. The characterization in case of Chaucer's works, they are very vivid. And the very best example which we are going to study, that is the Canterbury Tales. It contains so many miniature novels in itself, so many stories in itself, coming through the characters of different scenarios. Now, Chaucer's Troilus and Cressida, one more word, has been called a novel in verse. And for that, one can also attribute it as the first English novel. Had it not been written in poetry form, it would have been the first prose, which would be celebrated as the first novel. Now, the birth of Geoffrey Chaucer. There are several opinions about the birth of Geoffrey Chaucer. Some people they say it as 1340, some people they go for 1342 or 43. So we'll keep this lifespan or time span as 1340 to 1345. He was born in between, somewhere in the age in between. Now we'll go for 1340 here. So he was born about in between 1340 to 1345 in the Vintry, that is in Vintner Street in London, and he was the son of a prosperous wine merchant who used to supply wine to King Edward III's royalty as well. So that was a way in which he was well aware to the royalty. Now the death, he died in October 25, 1400 AD. During his lifetime, Chaucer had seen the reign of three kings together: Edward III, Henry IV, and Richard II. Chaucer primarily obtained his education at the court and learned French and Latin there. So he was very well versed in French and Latin too, besides English. And at the age of 19, that is in 1359, he had accompanied Lionel, the Duke of Clarence, on a military campaign to France where he was taken prisoner. Now see, this experiences of his life, working as a spy, then serving term as a prisoner, helped him very well in writing his works down. How a soldier used to be, or how the way a soldier can react or may think, that things are very well narrated by Geoffrey Chaucer because of this real life experiences which he had. He got married in the year 1366 to Philippa de Roet, daughter of the Flemish Sir Giles de Roet, and Philippa received an annuity from the Queen Consort of Edward III. So they had very good connection. Now Chaucer through this connection became John of Gaunt's kinsman. That is a special person, and he enjoyed Gaunt's patronage throughout his life. Now receiving a patronage is what like a scholarship or a funding which you get monthly or on yearly basis, and Chaucer got that due to the connection of his wife with the royalties again. He was granted a royal annuity for life of £20. Now see, he had such good connections with the royalty that when he went to France to fight in the Hundred Years' Wars, it is an incident, Hundred Years' Wars, which you will go through while going for the age of Chaucer, where he was captured for ransom, and this ransom was paid by King Edward III. Now think of a king who will be paying a ransom or an amount in exchange of someone's release. So such important was Geoffrey Chaucer. Now he was sent for several missions to France, Spain, and Italy by the royalty, of course. So he was such good related to the royal family. During his lifetime, Chaucer held a number of royal posts. Then he was appointed the comptroller of the lucrative London customs in 1374. Then he was made controller of taxes on wine and other goods with the right to employ a deputy in 1382. Then in 1385 he lost all his offices. Then King Richard II came to the throne. He was the son of Edward III. Now see, after losing his office again, he moved to a residence in Kent. Then Chaucer was restored to power in 1836, and then he became a member of the Parliament for Kent. Then when Chaucer's wife died, he was made clerk of the king's work. Now this time, during the end part of his time, was when he wrote the Canterbury Tales, it being the best of his life. So it was a collection of 24 tales narrated by 29 pilgrims who were on their way to visit St. Thomas Becket's pilgrimage. So the works of Geoffrey Chaucer can be divided into the three periods of Chaucer's life in which he wrote different works. The first period of his life, which was also called as the French period, in that we can see that here there was much of French influence. It includes his early work, which is based largely on French models, especially the work Romain de la Rose and the poems of Guillaume de Boucau. Now, here Chaucer's chief works during this time were the Book of the Duchess, and this is an allegorical elegy written in 1369 on the death of Bianca, wife of John of Gaunt, and a partial translation of the Roman de la Rose. So here, there we will see the importance of the death of a lady here, and it is an elegy over the death of this lady. The second period, which is the Italian period, it is of Italian influence. In this time, his works were modeled primarily on the classical writers such as Dante and Boccaccio. Major works of the second period include The House of Fame, which recounts the adventure of Aeneas and after the fall of Troy. Now, Aeneas or Aeneid, okay, after the fall of Troy, Helen of Troy, if you have watched that movie or read that work, you must be knowing about how the Greek literature is put into this. Now, the Parliament of Fowls, which talks about the meeting of fowls on Saint Valentine's Day, and a prose translation of Goethe's De Consolation Philosophiae. So these were the important works during Italian period. Now coming to the third period, that is the English period. Here is where we'll see the work the Canterbury Tales. Now Chaucer's third period was a period of mature strength and originality in which he pursued the bent of his own genius. In this period, he wrote The Legend of Good Women, which is a series of biographies of famous women from myth and history. Chaucer's masterpiece, the 17,000 lines Canterbury Tales, mostly written after 1387, belongs to this period. So, Canterbury Tales consists of 17,000 lines in total. Let us have a look at the style of writing which was used by Geoffrey Chaucer. Chaucer, he had added new words from Romance languages, that is, from Latin, French, Italian, and Spanish, and enriched the language of English. Most literature in England was not written in English before Chaucer. He gave impetus to the development of English as a literary language by deciding to write in English, of course, by using new words from different languages as well. English literature before Chaucer did not use much of rhyme. It was Chaucer who took the idea of rhyme from French literature and introduced it into English. So we will see the use of heroic couplets, which is iambic pentameter in rhymed couplets in Canterbury Tales also. Chaucer is known for his metrical innovations and new verse forms, and he invented the rhyme royal, which was one of the first English poets to use the five-stressed line, a decasyllabic cousin to the iambic pentameter in his work. So there is a saying, or there is a saying by the American poet Lowell about Chaucer that he found his native tongue a dialect and left it a language. So the native tongue of Chaucer being English, he found it as a dialect and he left it as a major language to be used till date. Chaucer also used irony in his works. Now the very tale, the Pardoner's Tale, you will find heavy usage of irony throughout the work and use of proverbs. See, literature being the mirror of society and also a reflection of the religion or the religious texts they follow. Chaucer has implemented these proverbs from his religious scripture, and that is Christianity, meaning Bible. So he has used so many proverbs from the Bible too in his works. You will come across many of them. The characters which are there in the Canterbury Tales, they are also related to Christianity, and you will see the characterization and the story speaking which has a moral at the end, and also some proverbs related to the Bible. So the usage, the heavy usage of all these things, humanism, believing in humanism, then realism, everything you will find in the works of Geoffrey Chaucer. Let us also have a look at the other major poets of the age of Chaucer. Coming to the first one being Mr. William Langland, his work span being 1330 to 1386. He is generally regarded as the single author of the remarkable 14th century poem Piers Plowman. Now see, Langland's life is not very well known in history, but about his life references can be drawn by looking at his autobiographical references in the poem Piers the Plowman. He was born in Ledbury, Hertfordshire, and that was in London, of course, and he was probably educated at a Benedictine monastery in the Malvern Hills. So he was educated for a career in the church, that is theology, and he appears to have married and never proceeded beyond minor orders. He earned a living by singing masses and copying documents. Masses in the sense praying. There is a custom of praying in Christianity and which is called as Mass, and he sang there in the Masses. Langland had a deep knowledge of medieval theology and was fully committed to the implications of Christian doctrine, and he is believed to be dead in London in 1386. Now the major works of Langland being Piers the Plowman, Three Dreams of the poem, they showed how he He believed in theology and in mythological elements of Christianity. Now he employs the common medieval form of the dream vision in which he presents the story under the disguise of having dreamt it. He talks about the failure of ideal society, that is, lack of Christian principles being followed by the people. Now, in the dreams of the poem, there he talks about a crowd of penitents in search of Saint Truth, and there he sees that the pious becomes the good Samaritan who practices charity, and the simple plowman is identified with Christ himself. So there you will come across his inclinations towards Christian doctrine, because he had studied theology in order to have a career in the church. Now, coming to John Gower. John Gower, whose lifespan was from 1330 to 1408, he was also an English poet, and he was one of the major court poets of the 14th century. According to David Deutsch, John Gower was a more typical representative of his age and class than Chaucer could claim to be. But there is little information about him, very little information about him. But we know that he must have held a legal office of some kind, perhaps in Westminster, for which he was highlighted. Now, in his literary career, he began writing in 1376 and in French language, and it was called Miroir de l'Homme or Speculum Meditatis. It describes the development of sins, vices, and virtues, as also the remedy of repentance available to man. He talks about Blessed Virgin Mary in his work. Then he writes about a dream allegory that deals with the peasants' revolt, and it develops a moral analysis of social decay under the rule of King Richard II. Now, after Canterbury Tales, it is John Gower's most well-known work, which is 33,000 line consisting Middle English poem, which is Confessio Amantis. Now, Confessio Amantis meaning the lover's confession. It was written at the request of King Richard II. Remember, King Richard II was the grandson of King Edward III. Now, the first version of the poem was dedicated to King Richard II, and then later version of it was dedicated to King Henry IV, the son of John of Gaunt. Remember, in order to get patronage or in order to be in the good books of the royalty, you need to please the royalty as always. So after the reign of King Richard II, it was the reign of King Henry IV. So that is why the subjects of his poem they changed with the reign of the kings. Now, Confessio Amantis, which is the lover's confession, is a collection of exemplary tales of love. It is written in octosyllabic couplets, and the works records the confession made by an aging lover. Here in the end, we will see that Gower is cured of his love and he recovers his reason. And at the end of his life, Gower wrote some Latin poems and some of his French ballads. He married very late in life in 1398, that is at the age of 68. He is believed to have died around 1408.
We'll continue with the Pardoner's Tale in the next class. Till then, have a good day and take care.